Hello, Wendy. It's so nice to have you with us today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to dive into everything heavy metals. We're going to relate that to headaches and migraines and really dive in. But before we get started, can you give us just a little bit of background on yourself? What got you into this field?
Yeah, essentially, I'm like a lot of guys listening. I was, just really trying to figure out my own health issues and try to be the healthiest person that I can be. And I had reached a point in my life. I just had a baby. I was 37 and really had felt amazing before I got pregnant. But after about a year after my pregnancy, I was feeling really tired, having a lot of trouble losing weight, brain fog, not sleeping well, just having a lot of stuff going on. And after a year after having my baby, I was like, this is not mommy brain anymore. This something's going on. And so I went to the doctor, I figured out what's wrong with me. And they said I had the hormone levels of a menopausal woman at 37, which I was, thrilled to hear about. And then I had thyroid hormone issues, very low thyroid hormones and low stress hormones. And so the doctor wanted to put me on hormone replacement therapy, which, is fine, a fine choice for some women. But at 37, I thought, well, isn't that for menopausal women? Why? That just doesn't seem like a logical thing for me to do. I'm always like, why this, why that? I always question everything. So I just thought, well, how did my body get into this situation in the first place? That was a more logical question to me. And then what do I do to restore my natural functioning? So I went on Dr. Google and I typed in like, what causes adrenal fatigue, and I came upon a website that did heavy metals testing and talked about heavy metals and chemicals interfering in hormone production. And I thought, that's something that I haven't touched on before, but I focused always on my diet and my health and exercise and just felt like I was doing everything right, like this huge bag of supplements, but I had never really thought about detoxification. And I frankly didn't think that heavy metals applied to me because I was so healthy. I read about mercury, of course, in my health readings. I read about lead and all that stuff, but I just thought, well, I don't have heavy metal toxicity. I'm super healthy, right? But then when your health, tanks, and then you start desperately searching for answers. So I think, for me, I did this heavy metals test and I had all these different heavy metals. And I thought, oh my God, where did I get this stuff? And for me, it just started this passion, like this light bulb just went off inside me. I'm like, this is what's going on. And so as I started researching and just, I got really excited about this and I wanted to teach other people about this and the importance of detoxification. Is I felt my own health dramatically improving the more and more I detoxed and whatnot. So MyersDetox.com, my website, was born.
Wow, that is amazing. And it is true. I think that a lot of people think they're not thinking of heavy metals. It's way more common than we actually assume that it is because you're thinking, oh, okay, I'm not, unless you were thinking of like, oh, you have exposure that you couldn't be getting the heavy metal exposure from just your everyday life, but it is so much more common. I know that kind of like what you're saying, there was one time years ago that I did a test and actually I like went down a rabbit hole too, and I figured out that it was coming from my city water. And I called the company. They're like, "Oh no, there's no way it can be coming from this." But I got water filters and everything. And once I made even some of those changes, it was amazing that was coming through our water that we'd never suspect. It is crazy.
There's so many toxins in water. I mean, it is insane. And that's a big problem for a lot of people because a lot of people focus on their drinking water. I mean, most people don't get that right either. But, a lot of people are focusing on drinking water. And I'd always drink spring water. I mean, since I was a teenager, I was always kind of like a fanatic about water, but I was showering in just regular water. And you can absorb a gallon of water with every shower that you take, not to mention swimming and taking baths and things like that. So you can absorb a lot of like fluorine and chloride. And I mean, there's just dozens of chemicals, not just chemicals, but people's medications that they urinate into the water, that water is recycled. And then, testosterone and birth control pills and the antidepressants and those things, those are not checked for and filtered from our water that comes back into our shower water. There's a lot to think about there. There's a lot. It's the chemicals and metals testing done in municipal water sources is woefully lacking. It's just not even close to being adequate. And so we really have to take responsibility into our own hands. But even if you took every measure possible, you did the whole house water filter, you ate only organic food, you cooked everything at home, you had the right pots and pans, and you just did everything natural. Even if you do all that stuff, you can still get a lot of toxins. Your breathing air is one of the number one issues. The air that we breathe is one of the number one ways that we absorb toxins. So there's only so much you can do. You can't live in a bubble. When I first started learning about all this stuff, I was like, oh, gotta take the shoes off at the door and you have to do this. And, I just went nuts and I just changed everything. And it's quite expensive and there's a learning curve involved. And I have all that info, if you're ready to dig in, on my website for free. But no matter what you do to control everything, which you have to, you need to reduce the inputs and the accumulation of toxins in your body as much as you can. But that being said, you still are going to be exposed to stuff. You're still going to go eat at Cheesecake Factory sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah.
You're going to have a Coke every once in a while. You're just going to get exposed to stuff. So you really need to think about doing it like a sensible, ongoing detox plan or live like a detox lifestyle. That's really the ultimate solution to removing our body burden of toxins that we have that's affecting every different organ system in our body.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I work with a lot are headaches and migraines. And I know we had talked a little bit about some of heavy metals that are specific to migraines. So could we dive in a little bit there too?
Yes. So the main metals that affect migraine or that can contribute to cause migraines and headaches are cadmium. Cadmium is found. So I'll just go over the list first and go into more details. So cadmium, iron, copper, mercury, aluminum, lead, thallium, tin, and bismuth. Okay. And so I've done research for a decade. So I can tell you with every metal and every health issue it causes, but those are the ones for migraines. And what a lot of these metals do is they poison enzymes and they poison hormones, they poison proteins and their ability to function properly. And so what they can do is they can slow down nerve transmissions. They can reduce the production of hormones, reduce the production of neurotransmitters. They can affect our digestion. They affect our energy production, which will affect our brain function. Our brain takes 20% of the energy that we produce, uses 20% of the energy that we produce. So anything that these metals affecting mitochondrial energy output is going to affect your brain, indirectly. And so what these metals like aluminum, it can outright kill brain cells. It slows down nerve transmission. These metals affect the brain and our nervous system in so many different ways. I can just go on and on and on.
Yeah. And another thing people have a lot of trouble with is energy. I see a lot of people with fatigue and low energy, and there's association there. So are there specific metals that you look at when someone comes to you and saying they have fatigue, low energy?
Oh, absolutely. Because that's the number one complaint everybody has.
Mm-hmm.
And even if someone's not chronically fatigued, they all want more energy,
So we
and so,
mm-hmm.
and so and I wrote my book about this. It's called Limitless Energy, because I found in my research, there are certain metals like arsenic, aluminum, tin, thallium, and cesium, and mercury and lead as well, that poison enzymes that transport nutrients into our mitochondria, which are little cells, powerhouses that make our energy, our ATP. And so these metals will poison our ability to make ATP, to make the energy currency of our cells. And so in doing so, it just reduces our body's ability to produce the amount of energy that it's actually capable of. So as long as you, in any case of chronic fatigue, has all or some of these metals. It just goes without question. And so in order to overcome chronic fatigue, you have to do some heavy metal detox. I also think there's, you have to do emotional trauma work as well. Do an emotional detox is also important.
Yes. And so whenever, I know you do heavy metal testing, I do heavy metal testing, there is ways for people to know, because I think listeners probably are thinking, okay, how do I know that, if I'm even have heavy metals or where to even start? So I guess what would be the first step when if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, I'm not considering heavy metals, this isn't something I even think about if I'm being exposed, which we know we all are, like where to even start for someone?
Yeah, so you can start with just taking some detox supplements. You can start with taking a binder. That's the simplest detox that you can do. I have one called CitraCleanse. It's a nice mild citrus pectin. You can do liver support. You can take liver supporting herbs, coffee enemas, liver flushes, things of that nature. That really, because our livers are our number one detox organ. So that will really help with facilitating detoxification. And but it's good to know what metals that you have so that you kind of know what targeted nutrients to take, because different nutrients, different minerals detox different heavy metals. And so some people have some strange metals that are very random that they need to specifically work on. So it's really good to find out what your levels are, and also test consistently, because your very first heavy metals test, usually people are like fatigued, or they'll have nutrient deficiencies, they're not able to detox very well, so we don't always see a lot of metals on that first test. So you have to be aware of that. Once you start getting someone a detox program, taking certain nutrients, taking minerals, doing some, detox protocols like infrared saunas, and you really start mobilizing all this stuff, then we will see stuff coming out on testing. And you usually will start seeing different metals popping up to release on different tests. And you're like, oh, wow. You see stuff coming out of your liver, stuff will come out of your bones or other tissues, and it'll show up on the test. And you're like, wow, that's a new one. Like for me, I had a lot of mercury and arsenic on my first test, but on later tests, I had a huge release of uranium, which I got from my shower water, which causes blood sugar issues and diabetes. Then another test, I had a huge release of thallium, which is in our, it's just naturally occurring in petroleum deposits. So we breathe that in the air, major cause of fatigue. Then I had a big release of cesium at one point, which is released into our air from nuclear disasters like Chernobyl and other nuclear testing we may not be aware of. That's happening, the Fukushima disaster in Japan, which is still spewing cesium into our ocean. So just a lot of metals were coming out of me. Everybody has lead. Everyone has lead. Everyone has aluminum. Everyone has mercury. I mean, it's just impossible to avoid these metals in our environment, whether or not they are on test or not. It doesn't matter. So it's good to know what you're working with, so that you can do kind of more of like a targeted sniper approach to detoxification versus like a shotgun approach, which is just like, let's take a binder and some B vitamins and some minerals or zeolite or whatever. That's kind of more of like a shotgun approach. It's just trying to sweep everything. But there's some metals you really need to be very targeted with. And then when it comes to environmental toxins, the World Health Organization has done testing. We have over 500 different chemicals on average in our body. And a lot of that's stored in our fat cells. So if you've got a little muffin top, or you just can't, like, you're just killing yourself. And you're just like, if I was in my 20s doing this workout, I'd be a freaking Olympic athlete. Because that's what I would tell myself. At one point I was working out 6 to 8 hours a week. And I'm like, what do I have to do to lose weight? Like, why is it so difficult now? Like, I'm only 37. I'm not that old. This is not a slow metabolism issue, and so for me, once I started really getting that detox groove, doing infrared saunas, and you can do ionic foot baths. Those are also amazing. I mean, you see the weight really come off of you. Like, I had a friend of mine, he's a cancer doctor, ironically. He got an ionic foot bath, and he said he did them every day for a month, and he lost 15 pounds. And he didn't do anything else different, like with his diet or exercise. He was just, once you start mobilizing these toxins, the body doesn't need the fat cells that it's using for storage any longer. So you just the body just naturally metabolizes it. I mean, it's not going to be that simple for everybody, but you kind of get the idea of what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And that's a good point because when people have those yo-yo diets where you're going because toxins are stored in fat cells, that's another really when you're losing a lot of weight, a release of toxins. So I think then sometimes people are actually on, can focus on the weight loss and drop weight without considering that they're releasing toxins into their body. So when you're on that kind of a weight loss plan, it's important to also be working on binders and things that really focusing on toxic exposure and overload in that process too.
That's a really good point, that because there are some people like, if you starve yourself, yes, you're going to lose weight. I mean, your body is not going to have any choice. But, I had a friend of mine, she lost 110 pounds and she actually developed a cyst at the base of her spine. And one of the reasons we develop cysts is to store toxins and kind of create this protective casing around them. She had to have it removed, but the body was storing all the toxins in there. It's kind of gross.
Yeah, I know. And then so when you think it's overwhelming, I do think it's something I remember about 15 years ago, I read a book called Toxic Sandbox, and it was I had just had new babies and I was still in the conventional side of medicine. I hadn't moved into the functional medicine space but I had always had this interest in natural holistic care, but I felt it was almost like I read the book and I felt like, wow, this is eye-opening. And then but can I even handle it? Because it was really opening your eyes to exactly what you're saying. There's toxins everywhere. They're in our carpet, they're in our clothes, they're in our, everything in our house. And so it's sometimes easy to just bury your head in the sand because once you open that door, it makes everything feel a little bit more overwhelming. But from what you're saying and what I experienced too, that once we just need to upregulate our body's ability to handle the load, and they're there, I guess, whether you acknowledge them or not.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's why it's really important for me. I used to get really worked up about stuff, especially when I was first learning about toxins. But now I don't worry about it so much now. I just live my detox lifestyle. I do my infrared sauna. I do my Ionic foot bath on a regular basis. I, really into caring for my liver and, doing coffee enemas and doing, other types of modalities to help with detoxification and eating a really healthy diet, juicing and, eating the top 5 detox foods, which are egg yolks, strangely enough, and like garlic, onions, ginger, and broccoli sprouts. I incorporate those a lot into my diet to help my body detox better, and just keeping those detox pathways open and trying to eat organic as much as I can. Just once you just kind of start living this lifestyle, it just becomes second nature. But it's really as important as so many people focus on diet or the supplements they should be taking, or exercise. I have friends that exercise 2 hours a day that died of cancer, and they thought that they were super, super, super healthy because they ate pretty good and they worked out 2 hours a day, but it's just not that simple. Today with the number of people that have cancer, that have autoimmune issues, that have diabetes, that have heart issues, high blood pressure, all of those can be tied back to toxins. The Dr. Joe Perzorna, who wrote Toxin, he's read over, just a mountain of research. He's a founder of Bastyr University. He said the number one cause of diabetes is toxins. And I concur with that. Absolutely. And the same thing can be said for hypertension and for other health issues. Hardening of the arteries is caused by cadmium. And it can be calcified tissues as well, but cadmium hardens your arteries. And where do you get cadmium? Cigarette smoking. That's why people that marijuana as well. That's why people that have that smoke develop heart disease and high blood pressure and diabetes. It's because of the cadmium that they are getting in the cigarette smoke, and that's just accumulating in their body. And cadmium also causes more cancers than all of the other heavy metals combined. So there's just a lot of connections that can be made, in all the research that I've done. Just really almost any health issue or symptom can have heavy metals or chemicals as the underlying or outright root cause.
Yeah, it really is. Once you really open your eyes, it can make a huge difference in health. And so, what are your favorite? Like, I know you have a lot of different detox protocols that you use. What are your favorite or most effective detox protocols?
I really, the easiest lowest hanging fruit is taking a binder. So that's the easiest thing that you can do. And you have to take a binder no matter what kind of detox you're doing, whether it's like you're trying to do a juice fast, or you are, taking a supplement for detox, whatever that is, or you're doing an infrared sauna or coffee enemas or whatever you're doing. You need to be taking binders. That's the number one mistake people make. When you start mobilizing toxins, you need a little sponge to absorb it. And then the next thing I really like is Ionic foot baths. Those are so easy to do, and they're so effective. And usually, people think that the toxins are going into the water, like, oh, the water's changing and there's more toxins. Yeah, there's some toxins in the water, but it's more that you increase the urinary and fecal output of toxins a few days after you do the Ionic foot bath. Okay. And so, but also I noticed in doing foot baths that say if I'll be doing a foot bath and it'll be kind of like a light brown color. I've been doing them on a regular basis. And then one time I went to LA for a month, didn't have my foot bath, and I came back and the water was black. So there
Yes.
are some toxins in the water
Yes.
that are coming out, but but if I a couple weeks of doing foot baths, it got down to like that light, darker brown and then lighter brown color. And sometimes I've had, clients report that they used a Geiger meter, which tests for radiation. They had radiation coming out in the water. The water was testing for radiation. I've had other people say the foot bath was totally clear, and they had this really strong smell of ammonia that was coming out in the foot bath. So there's a lot of stuff coming out. Infrared saunas, also amazing. Whether it's a far infrared or a full spectrum, a lot of research that shows that those are super healthy in many, many, many ways, not just for detoxification. They're a big de-stressor. My mom used one for 20 minutes a day for 30 days. It got off her blood pressure medication. They definitely reduce high blood pressure. So just a lot of different benefits to those, including detox.
Absolutely. I actually have a Ionic foot bath. So I just keep thinking I haven't used it regularly for a little. Life has gotten busy, and I'm going to get off this podcast and get it back out. And like
yeah. And see,
yes.
You could be doing one while you're doing this
Yeah,
podcast.
you're right.
That's why they're so great, because anyone can do them. You can do them while you're watching TV, while you're working. Kids can do them. Old people can do them. Sick people can do them. Not everyone can do infrared saunas. Not everyone has the room for an infrared sauna. They're very expensive, but Ionic foot baths, you get what you pay for. I only recommend the Ion Cleanse by amajordifference.com. Okay. It's a medical grade, and it has a certain frequency that's released into the water. That's why it works so well. So, you have to do about 400 hours on average of foot baths. And so if you buy a cheap one, you might have to do like 2,000 hours of them, because it's just not as strong. So 400 is still a lot of hours. Okay. But you can do, an hour or 2 hours a day. I was doing 2 hours a day at one point. Not totally recommended, but, there's no race here. But, some people are like, just want to charge on through a bull in a China store, but, any type of detox you do, including Ionic foot baths, you need to take minerals. Most heavy metal detox definitely depletes minerals. So you need to take lots of magnesium, zinc, selenium, things of that nature, and also replete electrolytes and trace minerals. Super, super important.
Okay, listen up to that. So we'll link the Ionic foot bath in the notes, and then make sure when you're doing that you're also, if you're going to go try that, sometimes, you take on these things and it's like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'll get this and I'll do this, but make sure you're, also taking the binder and repleting your minerals when you're doing some of these things.
Exactly.
Yes. So I know you also have a heavy metals quiz that that is available. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I bet you guys are wondering, what your own body burden of metals are. So I created a simple quiz you can take at heavymetalsquiz.com. Just takes a few minutes based on some lifestyle questions. You can get your results and learn your relative body burden of heavy metals. So you can go check that out again at heavymetalsquiz.com. There's a free video series afterward that answers a lot of your frequently asked questions about detox.
Thank you so much. And you've provided so much great information here today. Thank you so much for coming. And can you tell our listeners where they can find a little bit more about you if they think I have this heavy metal burn, I want to know more about your detox protocols?
Yeah. Well, you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Wendy Myers. And I'm also on all the social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook at whatever social media /Wendy Myers, or I'm sorry, Myers Detox. So everything, Instagram, everything at Myers Detox.
Well,
And
thank you.
my website,
Oh,
of
yeah,
course,
go.
too, not forget.
Yes, yeah, tell us your
MyersDetox.com.
website.
Yeah, it's MyersDetox.com. And I also have the Myers Detox podcast as well. I have about 450 episodes. So I've been doing that for quite a long time. And that's a wealth of education, tons of free resources on my website on MyersDetox.com.
Well, thank you so much. It's really needed, Wendy. So I really appreciate you coming on today, giving our listeners some great information, some places to get started. It's always good to have practical information. I did end up creating this podcast because I wanted things people could do every day. So this is something you can do every day to start getting a little bit healthier. You could get the detox foot bath. You can just start actually by paying attention to what heavy metals you think are in your life and things you can do to get rid of them. So thank you for joining us so much.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks. Have a great day, everyone.